All right, praising God. Sometimes for the commitment and the, I guess, flat out toughness to toil in obscurity. Let's call Daniel chapter 1 substance. Understanding that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are famous names that come out of this first chapter. They weren't men who necessarily had to toil in obscurity, but even though they came from nobility, they might be able to teach us lessons about toiling in obscurity in this chapter that I'm going to take a more narrative approach to, because Daniel, at least for these first few chapters, is going to be written in a more narrative format, and we are in holiday week. Understanding this is Thanksgiving, hopefully a narrative approach will be more consistent to the way in which we are trying to wind our minds down to the holiday. With that, Daniel chapter 1 starts out in the years of King Jehoiakim of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and allow him to stay king in Judah, specifically in Jerusalem, but he is going to take some of the goods from the house of the Lord for the treasuries of Babylon and some of the royalty and nobility back to Babylon for his own service. Some of those young men, among them Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel, will go into 3 years of training before being called into the king's presence for evaluation in his service. As they go, though, Daniel is going to purpose that he not defile himself with the food of the Babylonians that does not seem to be what we would call today kosher. And so he purposes in his mind that he is not going to eat the king's delicacies, but his approach is to simply ask. And those two items reminded me that he seems, in my acronym, to take part in Babylon in a wise way. So in purposing that he is going to maintain his integrity before God, he asks the he asks the chief of the eunuchs for permission not to take part in the Babylonians' delicacies, at which point his approach opens up the chief of the eunuchs to reason with Daniel that his concern is the king is going to see them in worse condition and then put himself or put his own job in jeopardy, at which point Daniel offers him an objective test. Instead of just trying to be flat out persuasive, he says, let the evidence speak for itself. Test us for 10 days and see how we compare to the others taken into the king's training, I guess for lack of a better term. At the end of the 10 days, the chief eunuch does not have to ask any more questions because it seems that he sees that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego indeed look better than any of the others taken in and basically fed by comparison. And even beyond that, he's so persuaded that he allows them to go on the, I guess we'd call it kosher diet, or the diet that respects the laws of the God of Israel. And when the king comes back and talks to all of the young men, he indeed finds not only do they look, I guess, more radiant, I guess we can call it, a goofy word, but they look better than all of the young men in the training or for the service of the king, but they also perform 10 times better than any of those called in like them. And I think it's going to also say, check me on this one, any of the wise men and magicians he already has on staff. Reminding me that even though they were pulled from the nobility, their status was not enough to get them by. Their substance at some point had to justify their place before the king of Babylon. Reminding me in times like these, one super famous rapper just served notice of a lawsuit against the record company that distributes his own music, claiming that they inflated the value of the music of a rival rapper in a battle that they had famously going on over the last year or so. Anyway, it reminded me that this one super famous rapper is claiming that this guy's value or his substance does not match his status. He had a little extra help, and thus they're going to duke it out in court, it seems. But that reminded me that even beyond these two famous rappers who might have actually both had some help in pushing their careers to a certain level, there are a whole different level of talented people who toil in obscurity, who in that obscurity might actually be outperforming both of them. Something that came to mind as I read through the comment feed of the video that sparked this whole controversy, in which one of the comments said, "This was the best diss song of all times," at which point I began to think, because the song was to me. And after thinking a little while, I was like, it might be the best song of all time in this genre, or it might just be the best song that you've heard of, reminding me of this situation where Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego simply let their work speak for itself, inviting themselves to be tested against the other young men of elite character. And more importantly, when they were finally brought in front of the king, they were found, not reported to be 10 times better in substance than everyone else of similar status, reminding me of why we sometimes say, my prayer for you is my prayer for me. May we live the kind of lives that would motivate God to cause our substance to more and more outperform our status.